Make sure to join my streaming service at darkandtwisted.tv to watch exclusive animated horror for members only. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like and comment on this video as it helps support the channel. I had just begun working at DoorDash, and the main reason that I've always loved working delivery is you don't have a boss looking over your shoulder or annoying coworkers getting on your nerves. It's just you, the road, and your customer. I guess I would say the worst part was the weather. Rain and snow can sometimes make it a little difficult. On this one particular night, it was during a winter storm and I had just arrived at my destination. It was an old house that almost looked abandoned. The grass was dry, overgrown, and brittle, and it looked as if it hadn't been cut in years. The dark gray paint on the house was beginning to peel, and a few windows were boarded up. So I walked up to the door and I rang the doorbell. But after waiting for almost 5 minutes, I realized that the doorbell, it was broken. So I knocked, then finally, an old woman answered the door. She was old, very old, and she was wearing what looked like a hospital gown. She didn't say anything, she just stood there, staring at me. So I told her that her order was $40. So she handed me the money and I handed her her food. Then I began to walk away, but before I could make it to my car, she called out to me and asked if I would join her for dinner. I explained to her that I couldn't do that because I was on the clock. But what she said next made me change my mind. She said that she was ill and didn't have that much time to live. She also said that she was lonely and she had no family and that she hadn't been visited by anyone in several years. I felt so sorry for this woman. My grandmother had just died 2 months ago and she pretty much reminded me of her. So there was no way I was going to say no and walk away. I would have never forgiven myself due to my guilty conscience by nature. So I told her that I would, then walked inside. It was dark, dusty, and bitterly cold inside, so I asked her if she could turn on the lights in the heat, but she said that she had lived without power for the past few years. She told me that I could light the fireplace if I was too cold, so I did. She told me to come join her at the kitchen table, so we both sat down. I wondered how I was going to join her for dinner if she had no power. Obviously, she wouldn't be able to cook anything, so she would have been the only one eating. But then she pushed the bag of food that I had brought for her over to me. But I told her that it wouldn't be right because she wouldn't have anything to eat. She replied that she wasn't hungry, then confessed that she only ordered the food just so she could have company. So I ate the meal, then I told her that I should be on my way. But as soon as I opened the door, there was an old man standing there, his eyes narrowing at me. He asked me what I was doing in his sister's house, and when I turned around, the woman, she was gone. I told him that she had ordered the food and that I was only the delivery driver and I was there to deliver the food to his sister. But what he said next scared the hell out of me. He said that was impossible because his sister had died there in that house 10 years ago. Obviously, it was the woman's ghost. I was never a believer in the paranormal, but what happened that night proved that ghosts are real. It was during a blizzard when I had no other choice but to order food from Uber Eats. I had just ran out of food, and since I had always hated to drive on snow and ice, I figured that Uber Eats was the only alternative. I had just tossed another log into the fireplace when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, it was the delivery driver with my order. "That'll be $59.36, he said as he handed me my food, then smiled. I don't mean to sound paranoid or anything like that, but the smile that he had given me was the creepiest smile that I had ever seen in my life. He asked me if I was home alone, and I found that rather odd. Being caught off guard, I told him that I was. By the way, food for thought. When someone asks if you're home alone, always say no. So I thanked him and then I quickly closed the door. 30 minutes after I had finished my food, my doorbell rang once again. I figured that it was just my neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Young, checking up on me as they did from time to time. But when I opened the door, it was the same delivery driver. "Yes?" I asked, but he just stood there smiling creepily again. So I asked him if he had forgot something. He told me that he had just gotten a flat tire right after he had left my house and asked if he could use my phone. Normally, I never let strangers in my house that I don't know, but what was I to do? I mean, what if I was just being paranoid and the guy really did need help? So I asked him if he had a cell phone that he could use, but he made the excuse that he was old-fashioned and didn't really believe in the new technology of today, which I found rather odd seeing that he was a food delivery driver. I mean, what food delivery driver doesn't have a cell phone? Anyways, I let him in but told him that he would have to stay by the door and use my cell phone. So I gave him my cell, then I walked into the other room. Little did he know I was listening in the entire time when he called someone and told them he was in. Then I heard him tell them my address. I knew that he had some sort of robbery planned. I was in panic and I didn't know what to do. I needed to get my cell phone back and call the cops, but before I could get it back, I heard a car pull up out front of my house. Then I heard the door open, then close, then heavy footsteps heading toward me. I ran upstairs into my bedroom and I locked my door. Then I hid under my bed. But when I heard the footsteps coming up the stairs, I immediately climbed out of my window, then ran to my neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Young's house, and I begged them to call the cops. When the cops arrived, the two men were arrested not only for robbery, but for murder as well. Come to find out, they had killed the real delivery driver and tossed his body at the side of the road. And this is the reason why I never ordered from a food app delivery ever again. I used to work for a food app delivery service, and I was on my way to deliver a pizza. Actually, I had anxiety because the customer was someone that I used to know, Jacob Madison. He was the boy that I used to bully back in high school, and I have always felt really bad about it. The way my jock friends and I treated him was so unfair. The part that even made me feel more like shit was we bullied him so bad that he ended up trying to kill himself. I was such an asshole back in those days. I even asked my boss if someone else could make the delivery instead of me, but he told me that if I didn't want to make the delivery, then I needed to find another job. So I had no other choice. So there I was, sitting in front of his house for about 10 minutes, trying to stall time. But then I finally grew the balls to walk up to his door and ring the doorbell. I waited for about 3 minutes, but there was no answer, so I rang it again. But after waiting another 2 minutes, I began walking back to my car, but then I heard the door behind me open. When I turned around, there he was. But the shocking part was he was in a wheelchair. This made me feel even worse. I was hoping and praying that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't remember who I was, that I was the dick that made his life a living nightmare. But then he said, "Well, look who it is, Jack Irving. We meet again." I wanted to tell him that he must have been mistaken, but since I hadn't changed much in appearance since high school, I would have just sounded like an idiot. So I said hi and I asked him how he was doing. Then I asked how life was treating him, which I immediately felt like a moron for even asking. "Look at me, what do you think?" he said, which made my heart sink in my chest. I felt as if I was standing in quicksand, so I handed him his food and then I told him the amount that he owed. He told me that he had to go get his money, then said that I should come in and shut the door behind me as I watched him wheel himself over to the table in the corner of his living room. Then he said that he had forgotten his wallet downstairs in the basement and asked if I would go down there and get it for him. So I told him yes, and then I began walking down to the basement. But as soon as I got on the third step, I was pushed down the stairs, hit the concrete floor, and blacked out. I woke up to my hands and legs tied with rope, and out of the darkness appeared Jacob. And the surprising part was, he was standing over me. Yes, I said standing. I asked him what the hell was going on, and how is it that he was standing and walking around perfectly when he was in a wheelchair only moments ago. He told me that it was all fake, that his legs were perfectly fine, but in about 10 minutes, my legs wouldn't be. When my eyes shifted downward, I noticed him holding a sledgehammer. Then he asked me if I had ever saw the movie from Stephen King. You know, the one called Misery, where Kathy Bates breaks the guy's legs, and I knew exactly what he was getting at. I begged him to please stop as he raised the sledgehammer above his head, ready to strike. But then, out of nowhere, I heard a gunshot as he fell on top of me. And standing behind him was a woman holding a gun. She told me that she was his girlfriend and that he hadn't been himself lately and had become very violent. He had obsessed over killing me for the past few years, and then she showed me a room that had my photos plastered all over the wall. And written on those photos, "Kill," written in red marker. Jacob ended up surviving and was sentenced to 4 years. But honestly, as crazy as this might sound, I feel like I deserved it from the way I treated him back in high school.